Good morning, Sec 1 history students. This is Mr. Seow, and today I want to talk to you about a new source-based skill called comparison. Before I begin, please make sure to have this worksheet with you, this set of notes on comparison. And if at any point you need to stop, slow down, or replay parts of the video to understand what I'm saying, please feel free to do so. You should also have your writing materials and some foolscap paper. By the end of this lesson, and please have in your writing materials, please have a highlighter and a blue black pen. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify a similarity or a difference between two sources. Please highlight this. For a similarity, you should be able to craft a combined inference. Please highlight this. If you need to, you can also write at the side similarity or similar. And for the difference, you should be able to craft a set of two contrasting inferences using a common criterion. Please highlight this. And at the side, you can write difference. And finally, as with all source-based questions, your response should have support using evidence. And in this case, there are two things I want you to take note of. First, you might be confused what's going on with a similarity and a difference. What is a combined and what is a set of contrasting inferences? Don't be concerned. These are the objectives that you will accomplish by the end of this video. Secondly, you will notice that we are using the word inference. So this skill builds upon the first skill, the first source handling skill we learned earlier this year, which is inference. You remember that inference consisted of the steps ATQ, infer in your own words to the question focus, explain your inference with this is because, and then give evidence from the source, supporting evidence from the source, which you cite by quoting the words or giving the statistical numbers or describing the picture, describing what you see. And we learn how to do inference using a single source. We look at the source and we made certain guesses and claims as to what the source would tell us about a question focus, a topic. When it comes to comparison, we upgrade. We are no longer looking at one single source. We are looking at two sources. And so when we look at comparison as a skill, we ask, are these two things, are these two sources, are they similar or different? And in what way? Please highlight this. And I'm going to start with perhaps a very accessible example. Let's look at these two cartoons. I've called them source X and source Y. And in these two cartoons, you see a group of 3 students. I would like you to observe what the students are doing and then try to fill in the table here. And you should pause the video now as you attempt this. And I hope you have attempted to fill in the blanks. It's alright to fill in the wrong answer, because if you fill in the wrong answer, you should leave it there and put a cross and write the correction in green pen so that when you learn again this skill, you'll figure out what you got wrong the first time. And that is progress, making a mistake and learning from that mistake. And in this case, if I were to look at these two pictures, I think it's quite evident that there are 3 students and one of them is sleeping in class. And that seems to be something the two sources have in common, the two cartoons have in common. Yet the response of the classmates in source X and source Y seem to be slightly different. They seem to contrast. And so let's try to respond to this comparison using the table here. Here I learned that in both cases, students may sleep in class. And so that's something I've observed. That is the combined inference, in fact. I can say that sources X and Y are similar in telling me that students may sleep in class. I also noticed that, and this is a bit of a deeper observation, I noticed that the frequency of sleeping in class is 1 out of 3 students. So sleeping in class is in fact an uncommon behavior. That's something else I noticed. And so this is a second combined inference with regards to the two cartoons. A second similarity. Something both cartoons have in common, something both cartoons tell you together. And you will observe that these similarities actually stem from a certain criterion, that they are similar because they tell me about the behavior of the characters or the frequency of this sleeping behavior. And ultimately, the similarity is to do with a combined inference, a single statement, a combined claim, which is that the students may sleep in class and this sleeping behavior is uncommon. What then is different about these two sources? What picks them apart? And we observe that the response of the classmates appears to be different, because here I see that the friends are winking and smiling. So it seems like they approve of this behavior. They find it funny. They find it amusing. Yet, on the other hand, here this boy is concerned and the girl is scolding. And so, in source Y, the classmates are a bit more responsible. They are a bit more angry. They are a bit more unaccepting of the behavior, disapproving of the behavior. And therefore, when I think about the attitude of the students, I realize that in source X, students have a playful and supportive attitude, whereas in source Y, they have a what sort of attitude? They have a critical and opposing, disapproving attitude to sleeping in class. So this here is a response that you might have come up with. Some negatively framed words, which would adequately and accurately capture the feelings of these students here. And notice that now I've done a comparison on both sides. I've noted the similarities between these two sources, and I've also found a difference between these two sources. That is the essence of the skill that we are learning today: similarity and difference. Similarity, the combined inference, what both sources tell me. Difference, a set of contrasting inferences. What source X tells me versus what source Y tells me. So it's important here to notice that in the combined inference, both sources tell you the same thing. And in the contrasting inferences, the sources will tell you different things, and they must be opposing. Supportive must oppose with disapproving. You could write unsupportive, you could write opposing, but there must be a contrast, an oppositional element in your difference. That's the first observation. So you can note perhaps here that these are contrasting inferences. And here, these are combined inferences. And that is an important structure that we need to take note of. Number one. Number two, I have a question for my Sec 1 students who are watching this video. My question is this. We are looking at two sources. So why is it that when I talk about the similarity, I only have one combined inference, a single combined inference? Here is one combined inference. Yet, in the difference, there are two contrasting inferences. There are two sources. So why is it that there's only one inference here when I talk about similarity? The question again is, I'm looking at two sources, I'm comparing two sources. So why is there only one single inference here for the similarity? Think about it. I hope you get the answer. I hope you figure it out. And then let's go to the next page. This is the frame. This is the frame of responding to a comparison question. You start with ATQ, that's the first step. And then for similarity, you jump straight to the combined inference. Or, if you're going for difference, you go for the criterion first and then the contrasting inferences. So this looks a bit confusing. I will explain it later when we write it out. But for similarity, you go from ATQ to the combined inference. For difference, you must go through ATQ, criterion, and contrasting inferences. Criterion says in terms of. So what are they different in terms of? Or you could do criterion for similarity. You won't be penalized, but you cannot stop them. So often I find it easier for students to just skip the criterion and go straight to the combined inference. So let's look at this response before I talk about the question types. So how similar are sources X and Y? Explain your answer. This is actually asking about this question. So I can proceed straight to responding to this question. Sources X and Y are similar in telling me that students may sleep in class, and sleeping in class is an uncommon behavior. This is evident from source X, which shows 3 students and the one boy in the middle is sleeping on his desk. And from source Y, which shows me 3 students and the one girl in the middle is sleeping on her desk. So in the pictorial source, I describe what I see as evidence, and I have completed my similarity. Now let's do and let's label. Here is ATQ. So you can label by drawing like a curly arrow out and labeling it. And here's the combined inference. And then you conclude with the evidence from both sources. And therefore, there are these steps. And I apologize. I realized that I forgot. I neglected to say this to you. But for this similarity, there's combined inference, and then the third step is evidence. Yeah. Similarly, for difference, there's contrasting inferences, and then the last step is evidence. Yeah. Okay. What about difference? How are they different? Sources X and Y are different in terms of, here, can we try doing it on our own? So what I want you to do is, I would like you now, my Sec 1 students, to pause my video, take reference from this, and try to fill up the difference on your own. I'm going to zoom in here nice and large for you to refer to. Try to fill up the difference on page 2 using this. Figure it out. Pause the video. Figure it out. And I hope you did that. I hope you tried to figure it out on your own. Honestly, that really helps you learn much better. And here I would do the 4 steps. Source X, Y, and different. That's the ATQ in terms of the criteria, in terms of the attitude of other students towards sleeping in class. Source X tells me that other students have a playful and supportive attitude towards sleeping in class. Whereas source Y tells me that, here perhaps I want to change the words a bit because I think there's a better match. There's a better contrast I can find. Source Y tells me that other students have a serious and opposing attitude towards sleeping in class. Those who are sharper amongst you will realize why I chose to change the words here, because I would like the contrast to come out very nicely. And this is evident in source X, which shows the other 2 students smiling and winking at the sleeping student. And from source Y, which shows, what does source Y show? Source Y shows the other 2 students scolding and frowning at the sleeping student. And here you have a match of the support. The evidence is matching towards the inferences. Okay. And now, with this done, I would like you to pause the video again and label the steps. And I'm going to do this with you. So the first step is ATQ. The second step is different from the similarity. The second step is criterion. The third step is contrasting inferences. X says something, whereas Y says something else. And the fourth step is evidence. And evidence must come from both sources. So you can use this now to draw curly brackets and draw arrows and label the steps. And I've invested about 15 minutes of this video to set up the structure of comparison. So this, broadly speaking, this hypothetical example, this worked example, using a very simple set of two cartoons, is precisely how you will approach comparison for the next 2 years. In lower secondary history, you approach comparison, you look at what is the similarity of the sources, you say, well, ATQ, the combined inference and evidence from both sources. And then you look at the difference between two sources, you start with the ATQ, different, and then you go into the criterion in terms of what, and then contrasting inferences, and then the evidence from both sources. One last small comment, which is that often it might be helpful when you do the criterion to phrase it as a question. So difference in terms of, how do I phrase it as a question? Different in terms of what is the attitude of other students. So if you phrase it as a question, actually the two contrasting inferences here answer your question. So the criterion in a way is like your focus. Criterion is like your focus. The two contrasting inferences here should respond to the focus, and then they should respond in a way that they are opposing each other. They're contrasting. Yeah. All right. If you didn't catch that, if you didn't understand that, you replay that part. This one are question types in the middle. Okay, so let me just remove this. These are question types. I wouldn't be too concerned with this. Essentially, in Sec 1, we start you easy. So we start you with something called a one-sided question. So if the word similar or different, if the command word similar or different is at the end, it means that I'm just asking you for the similarity or the difference, like just either one. So if it says, how are these two sources similar? It's just asking you to find the similarity, the end. A two-sided comparison is asking for similarity and difference. The command word's at the front. So how similar are these two sources? That's asking for both similar and different. So in this case, how similar, that is a two-sided comparison, and that is why we wrote both the similarity and the difference. And in Sec 1, we will start you off easy. We'll start by asking a one-sided comparison, similarity or difference. But by the time it comes to your end of year exam, we may ask you a two-sided comparison, similar and different. And the reason I told you not to be too concerned about this nomenclature for the moment is very simple. Number one, if you are in doubt, you can look at the marks. The comparison question with the higher marks is asking you for both similar and different for Sec 1. Number two, if you are really in doubt and you really can't tell, is this question asking me for just similarity, like how are they similar, just similarity, or is it asking for both similar and different? Just write both sides. Just write both sides. Because ultimately, when you go to Sec 2, Sec 3, Sec 4, every comparison question is likely to be a two-sided question. We will no longer ask you one-sided comparison question. The one-sided question is really only for Sec 1. This is really only for Sec 1 because you're starting off easy. So, if in doubt, just write two-sided, i.e. both similar and different. And you might struggle to find one side of it, and that's fine. You don't have to worry too much. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong, right? Because ultimately, we are learning. We are learning soft skills for the first time as Sec 1 students, and it's very normal to get confused, to get stuck, to be unsure. All you have to do is try, because as we try and we practice and we make mistakes and we overcome those mistakes, we get better. We get better. Okay. And so at this point, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to the next part, which is the actual historical sources. I would go with question analysis, and then I'll try one or two questions, and then I'll leave you to the rest of the practice. So maybe I start with question analysis. Let's go to this part. And can you take a moment, maybe you take about 3 minutes to look through all the questions and figure out whether it's one-sided or two-sided. And if you follow the rule I told you, which is the word at the end is one-sided, you will have figured it out. This is one-sided, so it's similar only. And then this is also one-sided, so it's similar only. This is one-sided, similar only, different only. And this one would be the words at the front. So now this, you know, it's two-sided, it's similar and different. Okay, so that is really all you need to figure out for one-sided and two-sided. And if you are further in doubt, the clue is at the mark, because 5 mark, 5, 5, 5, 5, 7. So this one is different. This one is different from the rest. It's two-sided. How different are source C and E? You must write both the similarity and the difference. So that's what I want to tell you. And then similarity, can I remind you, you want to go ATQ, combined inference, evidence. These are the 3 steps. Please write this down for yourself now, because it really helps you when you are crafting your responses. And different, you want to go ATQ, criterion, contrasting inferences, evidence. And I think this is the good time to talk about what I asked earlier at around, I think maybe the 8 or 10 minute mark of this video. I asked you, why is it that for similarity there are 2 sources but only 1 inference? Why do you only come up with 1 combined inference? And then I left the question, right? And you think about it. The answer as to why is it for the similarity you only write 1 combined inference even though you're looking at 2 sources is because if it's a similarity, it's something they have in common, they are saying the same thing. So you use 1 combined inference to demonstrate what they are both saying, because they must be saying the same thing, because that's what you're looking for, the similarity. So the combined inference is you weaving together information from both sources and finding out exactly what's in the middle. And for those of you who have done Venn diagrams, it's the intersection, right? The intersection of the 2 Venn diagrams. Okay. So let's go with study source A and F. How are A and F similar? Explain your answer. Okay. So let's look at A and F. And I'm just going to do this a bit cold because I haven't looked at this worksheet for a while. How are A and F similar? Maybe as we start here on page 3, come back with me to page 3. Maybe let's just look a bit at the information provided. Migrants. Why did migrants come to colonial Singapore? Migrants are people who travel. You can write this down. You can annotate what I'm doing. Come to colonial Singapore. Colonial Singapore refers to British rule. British rule. So this is British rule from 1819. That's the 1819 treaty to 1942. 42 is when the Japanese invade and conquer Singapore. So this is about 123 years of British rule here before World War II. And that's perfect because World War II is the war that starts in 1942. So this war is 1942 to 1945. Also, throughout the colonial period from 1819 to 1942, many people came to Singapore. In 1819, there were 150 people. Okay, that's very small. And by 1901, the population was 226,000 people. And that's crazy, right? That's literally more than 1,000 times of this 150. Okay, migrants came from all over. They came from Europe. They came from Arabia. They came from India. They came from the Malay archipelago. They came from China. I think the Chinese migrants will be the most numerous. We'll find out later. And some wanted to escape tough circumstances back home. So this is the reasons migrants come. That answers the question of why. Some wanted to escape tough circumstances back home. I'm teaching you a bit in advance here, but please write this down. This is called what we would call push factors. Push factors mean that you're being pushed away from something. Why do you do something and push factors? Because you wanted to avoid something else. Whereas others sought a better life. And here you can guess by coming to Singapore, being attracted to Singapore. So this would be pull factors. Attracted by something. Okay, so I'm just sort of getting some basic information about all the sources here. It's about migrants, about people who are traveling to Singapore from other countries. Why did they come? They might want to avoid something. Push factors. They might be attracted by something. Avoid something elsewhere. Or attracted by something here. Okay. So now we are going to look at A and F at long last. How are A and F similar? Explain your answer. A is a set of data. So this is a statistical source. This is the first time we're looking at a statistical source. And for a statistical source, the evidence is about citing the numbers. And I can see here that, well, it looks like the lion's share of migrants seem to be Chinese. So many Chinese migrants are coming. Of course, it's very diverse. They are also coming. They are also Europeans. They are also indigenous people. But it seems like the lion's share of people in Singapore are the Chinese at this point. Okay. And here it says, criminals from India were banished from India to Singapore. They built well-known roads and landmarks, and they reclaimed land. So these sources at first blush seem to be quite different. This source A, talks about the people who are in Singapore. There are some numbers here. And source B talks about people from India are coming to Singapore and what they are doing, and it's a textual source. So this is a textual source. Evidence is to quote the words. And so at first blush, they're quite different. So how do I find a similarity? If I think about it, well, I see Tamils here. And where that 13,000 Tamils here. So where did they come from? They must have come from India. And so I found a similarity. I guess the similarity here must be that sources A and F are similar in telling me that there were many migrants who came from India to Singapore. And that's it. That's all I want. I have my ATQ. I have my combined inference, and then I need my evidence. Evidence with this is evident from source A, which states that in 1891, there were 13,000 Tamils living in Singapore. And from source F, which states from 1825 to 1827, people were banished to Singapore. Banished from India to Singapore. Okay, and I'm done. That's all I want. So I have done my ATQ. I've done my combined inference. And I've gotten my evidence from both sources. Okay. If you wanted to explain your combined inference, you could also go further. This is because they were forced to come to Singapore. You could go further. So you could do your usual inference and explanation and then evidence. Yeah. Okay, and then now let me do the difference. So this you have to write on foolscap. Please do 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, 1F, every question on foolscap. So let me now do, maybe I'll do 1B for you again because you have a lot of similarity questions. Why are B and C similar? Okay. In what way are B and C similar? Here I have a picture. It's a pictorial source. Evidence is to describe what you see. you can annotate this next to source B, so you can keep note of how you do evidence. Source C is a textual source, so evidence is to quote the words. So here I see poor people receiving food in China. Okay, if it's about migrants, I'm guessing this is about the Chinese migrants now. And then I see someone who left China. And what is this person doing? He's saying that life was very poor. We could not grow crops. We survive on a tin porridge. We don't have sufficient rice. Okay, the similarity is quite clear. Sources B and C are similar. And here I have the year 1937. So I think I already have enough to write a similarity. Similar in telling me. Telling me what? Pause and try. Sources B and C are telling me this is because this is evident from source B, which shows, and from source C, which states. Okay, Sec 1 students, please pause the video and try. Try this question. Try this question. Pause and try on your own. And I hope you did try it. I hope you did try it. That practice is really the best way to learn. Sources B and C are similarly telling me that life was hard for people in China in the 1900s. This is because the people in China suffered from lack of food, which caused great hunger and starvation. Oh, I have this because here. It is evident from source B, which shows many people, poor people in Beijing, China, holding out empty baskets and hands and begging for food. The people look thin and malnourished. And from source C, which states, we could not grow crops. We survived on a tin porridge. We had many months passed before we could have rice. So, perfect. I have ATQ. At this point, it should be quite clear to you how to do this, because as the more you practice, the better you get. So I have ATQ, I have what? I have combined inference, and then I have evidence. Okay, and here you can pause and take this down on your foolscap. This would be the solution. If you already tried it on your own, and if you have your own answer there, you can just add on to your own answer to make it better. You don't have to rewrite everything. But the fact that you are adding on to your own answer, here you are learning, you're closing your own gap, you are seeing where you could have improved, or if your answer is even better than mine, well done. Share with us in the next lesson how you went about doing this question. If you find that your answer is very different and you don't know why, this is a great chance to ask, to learn, to find out more. And let's go to the difference. I wanted to do one difference question with you before I end off. Study sources D and F. How are these sources different? Explain your answer. Here, I have another statistical source, which is evidence, which is to cite the numbers. And here I have another textual source. Evidence is to quote the words. D and F, right? So just these. D and F. How are these sources different? And I'm going to write out the frame for you, and then I would like you to ATQ criterion contrasting inferences evidence. I would like you to then try on your own, pause the video and try on your own before I go about it. So sources D and F, how do you ATQ? Different. And then criterion in terms of criterion. Source D tells me that, whereas source F tells me that. This is the contrasting inferences. This is evident from source D, which states, and from source F, which states. And that's the evidence. Okay. So this is famine in India. Famine means that there is not enough food. They are starving. Okay, and lots of people are dying. This is another Indian person, a Gujarati businessman. So already I know that they are talking about Indian people. And oh, this is the one that we read earlier. The people from India were sent to Singapore and they helped to build Singapore. Oh, the difference is quite clear, isn't it? So D and F are different in terms of why people from India migrated to Singapore. And I want you to try. Pause the video and try this. Pause the video and try. What does D tell you? I see that there's famine, people are starving, they're really hungry. And I see here that people are being forced to come to build roads. So source B tells me that people migrated to Singapore. People from India migrated to Singapore because they were starving and were desperate to find a better life overseas, starving back home. Whereas source F tells me that people from India migrated to Singapore because. So what does F say? F says that it's because they were forced to do so. Forced to come to Singapore to help construct new infrastructure and build up the town. And what's my evidence? From source D, which states that maybe we can look at the period here, 1825 to 1867. There's a trick here. There's a trick. Haven't you realized there's a trick? What's the trick? So if this is my evidence for source F, that is 1825 to 1867, the trick is that I have to look at only this number. Why is the only number I can look at? Why is it the only evidence I can take from source D? Because it has to match, right? 1825 to 1867. So this here, we said that there was a famine in the years 1837 to 1838, which caused 800,000 people to die of hunger. This evidence would then be important because it would be telling me at the same time, on one hand, there are people dying of hunger, so they came to Singapore. On the other hand, people are being forced to come to build roads. So this is in fact the only evidence I could have picked. Oh, there was a trick. I forgot that I said a trap in this question. So this question is a trap. Look at the time period. That's important. The time period should be overlapping, so that way we can really compare the two sources. I couldn't compare any of these years because they are from different times. Okay, and you can write this on your foolscap also. So to conclude the lesson, similarity is 3 steps. ATQ, combined inference evidence. Difference is 4 steps. ATQ. Criterion. Contrasting inferences. And here there are 2 inferences because they are different, and evidence from both sources. And you write this all in one single paragraph. You write it all in one single paragraph for difference. So similarity, there are 3 steps: ATQ, combined inference evidence. Difference, there are 4 steps: ATQ, criterion, contrasting inferences, evidence from both sources. Your assigned work is to complete all 6 comparison questions. All 6 comparison questions on foolscap. And the final question here is two-sided comparison. So there must be similarity and difference. And I hope that in today's lesson, if I were to refer back to the objectives right from the start, you have learned how to identify a similarity and difference. You have learned how to do a combined inference for the similarity, a set of contrasting inferences for the difference, and support your inferences with evidence from the source. That's all I have for you today, Sec 1 students. It's good to see you. I'll see you again in the next lesson. Goodbye.